Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Jack. Jack Posobiec, a writer, filmmaker, political operative, and the author of Citizens for Trump, the inside story of the people's movement to take back America. He is, Europe at the moment? And you can also find him on twitter.com/Jack Posobiec. That's Posobiec. We'll put the links to those below. Jack, thank you for taking the time from your honeymoon to have a chat with us about Christmas.
Stefan, thank you so much for having me on right now. And I also, of course, thank my wife, the lovely Tanya Tay, for giving me about 30 minutes or so here to be able to sit down and chat with you. We are in the middle of our honeymoon. We just finished up. So we spent about a week in Israel. We got to be there while President Trump actually named Jerusalem the capital of Israel, basically unanimously. Of course, to much wailing and gnashing of teeth from the Palestinians in the West Bank. And then and now we're over in Europe. So we just finished up a couple days in Poland, and we're in Vienna right now.
Wow, what a tour. So I guess the greatest Christmas present, you got married pretty recently. When was it?
Just a month, just 1 month ago in Valley Forge, Pennsylvania, right? Pretty much my hometown outside of Philly.
Oh, that's fantastic. And how are you enjoying married life so far?
It's great, to be honest. It's everything that I've hoped for. And it's funny because, you always hear especially in media, right? There's these stories about like, we're not supposed to like marriage, or marriage is terrible. And, the old ball and chain, and marriage ruins your life. And that whole joke about, well, your life's over now, buddy. I haven't really experienced that because my wife literally is my best friend. I mean that like the old cliche, but we have a great time. We're just going on adventures. We haven't stopped moving since. I think we haven't really slept a lot because we're exploring. I should add, because we're exploring so much of Europe.
Exploring.
And Israel.
I think you've said enough there. We're trying to keep it clean here. Whatever you're doing with your spelunking gear is entirely between you and your wife. And it's a funny thing too, because I don't know if it was the case with you, Jack, but when I was growing up, you heard a lot of crabbing about marriage from married people. And the toilet seat is left up, and, all this petty crap and nonsense and detritus and so on. And it's like, man, marriage is like the greatest thing ever. And I really sort of felt when I got married that I had joined the great chain of civilization and the great chain of being. And, they say, well, it's just a piece of paper and so on. I did not find that to be the case at all. It was an adult, mature commitment for the rest of our life to create a haven for the safe upbringing of children and the support in better and for worse, in sickness and in health, until death do you part. That's some serious stuff. That's some dark magic of commitment. And there just doesn't seem to be any other way to get it.
Because actually on our wedding day, I don't even think I've mentioned this, to anybody before, but I remember thinking to myself, wow, this is your wedding day, Jack. This is the day that you are going to be doing something that, everyone else throughout history got married, eventually got set up to have their family, have kids. We absolutely want kids. And this is it. This is your history. So you're moving. It's a generational thing. My father was there. My mother was there. But that is a historic thing in terms of my life, but creating, actual human history that day as well.
Well, and it is a public declaration to everyone to say, don't let us screw it up. Like if you're going out, like your boyfriend, girlfriend, and so on, it's like, well, maybe it's going to work out. But if you go to people and say, I don't think it's working out, they're like, hey, whatever makes you happy, you're just boyfriend, girlfriend. But when you stand there in front of everyone and you make that public thunderclap of commitment, till death do us part, you're basically telling everyone, if we drift, herd us back together. We are making this commitment, so we need the community to help support and respect and reinforce what it is that we're doing. And it really is an invitation to an entire community to keep you at your word and to make sure that you stay together. And that's a beautiful thing.
Absolutely. And it's great too, because, it's, we talk about the culture wars and of course the culture war we find ourselves in these days. And it's like, here's one of the most traditional and it used to be considered normal things you could do to young people, just getting married and saying they love each other, wanting to have a regular monogamous relationship. But oh no, the forces of progressivism, the SJWs can't, and the cultural Marxists, they can't have any of that. This is flies in the face of their whole program.
And how are you enjoying the leveling up of the patriarchy that you are now experiencing? Now that your hands, your ass, your legs are humming with the electrical X-Men power of the patriarchy, how are you finding it?
It's interesting. You know, there's times where I don't realize the level of my own power. Sometimes I have to, you know, kind of when I'm talking to women, and of course, you know, they obey my every command. It's interesting when they just sort of, you know, bend to my will. But you know, sometimes you just have to kind of sit back and say, I'm a man. I deserve this.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's amazing. Beds get made, sandwiches magically appear, feet get rubbed. It's all exactly what the SJWs think it is as soon as you get married. And of course, you know, the reality is that as a man, you are, when you get married, particularly if you're going to end up having children, you are saying, well, I'm going to be the shelter, the protector, and the provider for this family unit from here to kingdom come. It is really, in a sense, a public commitment of service rather than it is an accumulation of penis-based power. And I think it's pretty hard for people to accept that.
No, I think it is too, because, you know, in our relationship, we're both Christian, we're both pretty traditional, and we sort of do follow those normal traditional roles in terms of the marriage. You know, I always kind of say that, you know, I'm driving the ship, but I'm a Navy guy, so I always talk about, you know, naval references. So I always say I'm driving the ship, but the ship wouldn't be running if it wasn't for her. And that's kind of the roles that seem to fit so well for us. And you look at, these are the same roles that have fit thousands of years in Western civilization and human civilization writ large.
So how did you meet the woman who became your wife, and how long did you date before you really began to get the sense that this was it? She was the one.
We actually met at a Bible study organized in Washington, D.C. area. My uncle is involved with them. He had invited me on, and one of her friends that she used to work with had invited her. And it was probably the second one I'd gone to, I think third or fourth for her. So we were both part of that Bible study for about a few weeks after we'd met. We was the first time we started dating. But even from that first moment, we had a really, really big spark. And it actually came from, of all things, so one of our partner Bible studies is in Beijing, China, and they're one of the, they call them house churches there because Christianity is extremely persecuted in China. So what they'll do is they'll pipe in over Skype, much like we're doing right now, and they'll actually have a way to interact with the Bible service throughout what's going on, just live there. And because it was in Beijing, I happen to speak Mandarin Chinese. I still live over there, and I was doing a little bit of translation for it. Well, along comes this girl, Tanya, young, blonde, whatever, and she starts speaking Chinese too to the people over in Beijing. And I look at her like she got two heads. I mean, I've never met someone else could do that. Well, it turns out that she learned Mandarin on her own while she was in school, and then spent some time doing a study abroad over there. And from that moment, it just clicked because there was so much we had in common in so many different random, seemingly ways. And then from that moment, I'd say we dated for about 2.5 years until we got engaged, and then 6 months after that, we got married.
So, wait, Bible study, is that similar to Tinder? Is that an app? No, I'm just kidding.
So I know, people always ask me that. I'm serious. People constantly, they're like, is that an app? Is that like Christian Mingle?
It's kind of an old app, kind of a hard copy old app.
No, we sit around. It's at Tom's house. We have finger foods. Pastor is there. There's a guitar. You know, it's a regular thing. And then, of course, because I live in the Beltway, then they look at you. Oh, you're one of those. And they sort of get really scared, you know. And it's funny because if I had said, oh, well, we met at one of these flesh markets, you know, like one of these bars with the one-night stands and, you know, extremely alcohol-fueled dating scene, that's perfectly fine for the millennial crowd, the jet set crowd in DC. But if you say, well, no, we met at a Bible study, and then we went out for a few dinners and we started dating, that's craziness.
It's weird how the sort of elites, the political and cultural elites, how foreign basic Christianity has become to them. Like you say, oh yes, I met my wife at Bible study, and they say, well, I think they genuinely think something like, so after 2.5 years and passing the monkey brain test at the Council of Elders, her father gave you the key to her chastity belt and you made love to her through a sheet with a hole in it. Like they genuinely have no cultural or philosophical or theological understanding of the very ideas that kind of help shape Western civilization at its core.
Exactly. So you talk to them about that, and you try to set it up, and I really don't push it very hard in my work in terms of what I do in my videos or what I'm doing on Twitter. every once in a while I'll bring it up if it comes up in a relevant sense. But I really think that mentioning it every once in a while, they say, oh, by the way, I'm Christian, but then showing by example, it can be a lot more persuasive to people than when you're constantly beating them over the head with religion or doctrine. And I get that. I totally get that. But at the same time, it's me saying, hey, just look at how I live my life. Number one, as a personal decision, I don't drink alcohol. We live a very healthy lifestyle. We are monogamous. We're together with each other. And, for better or worse, we absolutely do love each other. We spend almost every minute of the day together when we're not working. And I've never had a problem. We have our moments. I mean, life isn't perfect. No two humans are ever going to agree on everything, but we really do get along extremely well. We travel. This is our third time in Europe this year. We've been blessed to be able to come over many times, both for work and now for honeymoon. Though, of course, since I'm doing some work on the honeymoon, I'm able to declare it as a work trip for tax purposes for the business. It's amazing to just show people that, and to be living through it this way, and sort of the reality TV way that we all sort of live each other's lives now. And so I take it as kind of a responsibility to show, and I know that in my audience, I've got people that are watching that are saying, hey, we want you to succeed. So I want my marriage to succeed, because I obviously want to have a strong family, but also because I want to be able to be someone that people can point to and say, you know what, I'm not like that guy, but he's trying to do the right thing with his marriage. He's trying to do the right thing with his wife. Maybe that's something that I could do to find happiness in this world too.
It's funny too, because a lot of people think that freedom in relationships has to do with a lack of commitment. But in my experience, Jack, and I want to know what you think about this, the real freedom in relationships, the real freedom in marriage is knowing that you have that ironclad commitment to be together. Which means you can be free to disagree. You can have strong disagreements, knowing that it's not going to break the bond. Lots of people, you have friends, and it's like, well, or on early dates, you got to put your best foot forward and so on. Maybe you're faking it a little bit and so on. But when you have that commitment that is going to be there for life, you can truly be yourself, and you can truly allow for disagreements to manifest and to be dealt with, knowing for certain that nothing you do is going to break the bond in any foundational way. And for the people like myself when I was younger who thought that there was freedom in a lack of commitment, you will find that when you have that commitment, you are more free to be yourself than you could ever dream of in transitory relationships.
Oh my goodness! When I was single, I look back at that and the dating scene, and it's terrible. You don't want to be in it, especially in Washington D.C., where one wrong move. And I hear this with people. I used to be in the military, so I hear it all the time. One wrong move, one wrong text message, misunderstood communication, and suddenly you're getting hit with sexual harassment complaints. You're getting hit with consent issues. You're getting hit with all sorts of stuff. Then you're putting yourself in a place where you're thinking, is it okay to go out with this person? And then when you do go out with them, you're trying to constantly show this best side of yourself because you're trying to win them over. But in this case, because we have our ironclad commitment, because we have committed to each other, heart, mind, and soul, that we know we're together now. So we can have arguments. We can disagree. We were actually just out to dinner right before this interview. We were talking about it. We saw a couple sitting not too far from us, a couple tables over, and we could tell that it was one of their first dates. And we were sort of joking and sort of like analyzing their first date and saying, oh, this guy, he looks pretty nervous, but he's kind of talking a little bit too quickly and telling a story a little bit too animatedly to make her seem interested. And she was kind of going along with it. But then they got to this point where they had an awkward silence. Man, he was looking into his drink, and he was sort of stirring it. She was sort of scratching the back of the neck, looking around, and I turned to her and I said, it's amazing that when you find somebody you have that commitment with, the silence doesn't become awkward anymore.
Right.
That you can be together and just be happy in that moment, knowing that you're together. And believe me, I can talk, but there are times when we're together, we're not talking, but we're perfectly at contentment with each other.
Right. And sorry for those who are watching, I do apologize for Jack's bandwidth. It's actually not a bandwidth issue. He's just practicing his ventriloquism. So I just wanted to mention that. Now, what are you going to be doing? What are you guys going to be doing for Christmas this year? Your first Christmas together as a married couple. That's a wonderful time.
It is our first Christmas, so we are most likely going to be going to celebrate it with my parents up in Philadelphia. So I've got my parents there, my brother, cousins, aunts, uncles, they're all there. Her family is all over still in Europe, so we'll usually Skype in with them or do a video with them to be able to say Merry Christmas kind of at the same time.
Right. And, well, I guess you can't really say what you've got for your wife, but are you looking forward to did you think you've bagged the perfect present? Do you think it's going to be like tears of joy?
She is going to be so incredibly happy come December 25th this morning.
Excellent. Now, what was it like for you when you were growing up in terms of Christmas and family time?
Very traditional in terms of, we had the tree. We had my mom, my dad, my little brother. We were Catholic growing up, so midnight mass. And then my father, and it's great that he, even before the age of the internet and Periscope and live streaming and YouTube and everything, he always had the video camera out. So I have my own memories of Christmas, but I've also got videos of just about every single Christmas from my entire life, because my dad would set up the camera in the living room there and just sort of, we'd go throughout our day, and we've got VHS tapes of it that we've now converted over to DVD, so we've got digital versions, and it's amazing. I'm so glad that we have them, that I can go back and look at my dad just sort of pulling me around in the wheelbarrow on my first, or I guess a wagon, on my first Christmas, and then my brother comes along with the presents, and then we would always go forward to, we always sort of had like 3 or 4 different Christmases. So we'd start Christmas at my house, and then it would be lunch with one side of the family on my dad's side, and then maybe dinner with my mom's side, or, one iteration thereof. But always really big in terms of interaction with our extended family outside of the nuclear family.
Oh, very nice indeed. And what do you do for New Year's? Are you going to be going out? Are you staying in? What's your New Year's plans?
Depends. We've got a lot of events that people are actually talking about for this year. A lot of different, either Trump-related or MAGA movement type events happening. One is in D.C., another one's getting off the bat in New York, so we might actually be going to one of those. I'm looking at her right now because I haven't actually mentioned it to her yet. She's like, "We're doing what now?" But we're going with the president. Where? Yeah. Yeah, we might be doing one of those like political events for New Year's this year, but hopefully it's more of a party and social get together with the politics kind of as the reason why we've all sort of come together, but really something that we're there celebrating. We're just celebrating life. We're celebrating America. We're celebrating the movement as it is.
Now, for you coming up, I guess, okay, so retrospective for 2017, what's it been like for you, the highs and lows, and what are you looking forward to most for 2018?
Wow, yeah, it's totally not a complicated question.
Well, we also have to include the retweet from Trump. That's got to be kind of a feather in the cap.
No, that's got to be in there. That's definitely in there. So that, I mean, in terms of highs this year, obviously getting married has to be the number one for me. And personally, professionally speaking, the retweet from Trump was absolutely amazing. Kind of getting in there, and it was interesting because he doesn't follow me. He does, and I hadn't seen anyone else really in his circle of from the White House spot that had retweeted it before then. And it was sort of in the wake of the Charlottesville violence, and they had tweeted out why, that there is a lot of violence there. Yes, it was true. One person died. It was terrible. But why aren't we talking about there were over 50 shootings in Chicago in the same weekend? And it's become almost a litany of shootings in Chicago every weekend with 9 homicides at the time. But no national media outrage, no discussion about this. Lives lost, bodies in the streets, but we're not talking about that. I get retweeted by the president. And so for me, it was suddenly like, just shocking, because this is, take all of it aside and take all the, Donald Trumpism and everything else. That's the president of the United States. Reaching down from the White House and acknowledging you, and that's pretty amazing for me, having really only started politics on Twitter, at least in about a year prior to that is when I really got into the game, and it was definitely a huge feather in the cap. Of course, the media went completely insane, And I think the weirdest part of it, though, was so they tried to bring my Navy service up into it after they said, well, the person the president retweeted, he's actually a naval intelligence officer, and he's a reservist, and he used to be active duty, so he's a veteran now. And I said, not really sure why that's an issue with you, but I appreciated you putting up all the pictures of me in uniform. So I didn't quite understand what the issue was with that. It's like I was trying to hide it or something. No, it's right there in the bio. You guys can go read it. I'm pretty open about it.
It's like when they say, you know, controversial thinker, and it's like, controversial? Why, thank you very much. I sure as heck would not want to be non-controversial, because that's also called not being a thinker. So if the things that they think are insulting to me, I take as an enormous compliment.
Right. You know, conformist and regular Joe.
Completely uninteresting vanilla blatherer known as right now. Call me controversial, absolutely. That's kind of the job if you're a philosopher.
No, that's exactly it. So why wouldn't we want to shake this up? So then, of course, they're trying to call the Navy and get the Navy to say, oh, is Jack still in? Is he doing stuff? Yeah, and they turned back and said he wrote something on his Twitter account. There's nothing against the rules that say he can't. In his civilian capacity, has nothing to do with this. We don't have an issue with it. And
well, it's wonderful, sorry to interrupt, but it's wonderful to see the left dealing with the rational priorities and attacking the person who's pointing out how many people are getting killed in the inner city, rather than say, I don't know, doing something to reduce the number of people getting killed in the inner city.
Correct, because, and I mentioned it before, that how I feel that we're in a cultural war right now, and I would argue with anybody who says that we're not, because we just have to call it for what it is. That's what we're in right now. And there's no way that you can measure 2017 in terms of anything other than the cultural battles that have been waged, whether it be NFL, whether it be military, whether it be all the Russia stuff, the marriage stuff, violence at the left, all of this. And it's really interesting because we were talking about retrospective of 2017, and I was going through the year and I was thinking, wow, you really can't think almost of anything that happened in 2017, news speaking, without putting it in terms of Trump. This one person has found himself at the center of just about everything that goes on in our world today. And people, movies come out and they say, well, what's the movie say about Trump? What do the directors say about Trump? Why hasn't Taylor Swift talked about Trump yet? She needs to talk about Trump. We need to get Taylor Swift's opinion on Trump. So my question is, why is Trump the definition for everything? But at the same time, it shows the incredible amount of power that one individual has. And it's amazing to see him using it so very often for good, so very often for turning back towards traditional American, traditional Western values. When he went to Poland this year, for example, and I actually have a hand in teeing up some of the ideas that were used in the Warsaw speech from the president through my work with the Polish-American Coalition for the Trump campaign, that I really thought it was amazing because he was able to talk about religion, he was able to talk about history, and he was able to talk about Western society all together in one specific place, one very special place that's thrown off the shackles of it. Myself being Polish, of course, I just loved it, because talk about a place that faced socialism, faced communism, and also faced fascism, and has lived through both, so can understand the issues with both extremes, knowing how to live through that, surviving, defeating it, winning their own cultural war, getting their country back. It really echoes what America is facing today. It really was able to echo so much of what's going on, including Poland is facing right now with the EU trying to cram migrants down their throat, and the EU and Poland will turn around and say, well, we've accepted 1 million people, refugees from Ukraine, but apparently you guys have an issue with that. You want us to accept these other refugees because there's something wrong with those refugees, that they weren't the right refugees. Well, why do you want us to accept those? And of course, Merkel is, and Juncker, no, it's not that, it's not that. Well, it kind of is.
Well, I think, Jack, that's the amazing thing about what's happened with Trump, which is that the left had kind of given up post-1960s. They'd given up on debating because socialism had failed, communism had failed in so many different ways. And the theoretical underpinnings as to why it was failing had been amply revealed by, von Mises and all of the other Austrian economists. So they kind of gave up on debating, and then they just imported people who were going to vote for the left. They took over the cultural institutions, and they spent decades dragging the Overton window to the point where you couldn't discuss anything objective or rational with regards to nationalism or race differences and so on. And Trump, not directly, but simply through what he was talking about, was able to drag that Overton window back to the point where you can talk about things that before were not possible to talk about, really. And the internet certainly helped with that. And it is exposing a grave weakness in the left, that they simply attempted to stifle debate rather than improve their arguments. Since debate is back on, largely as a result of Trump, their weaknesses are being exposed, and that makes them very aggressive. And this is why, there's this violence, there's this Nazis, there's this lock swinging at people and pulling fire alarms and shutting down speeches, and there's all this violence because they've lost the capacity for rational debate. They have been stuffing the ballot with migrants and third worlders, and this weakness has been exposed, and this is why it is both a very exciting but a very perilous time as well, because when weakened animals are threatened or feel threatened, they can really lash out. So, I urge people to stay strong and stay hardy in this fight, but remember that it can be a very dangerous environment.
No, I'm certainly seeing that. Myself being in D.C., you can't go very far without facing either the violence in the streets from Antifa, groups that have assaulted me, have tried to assault my wife, other producers that I've been working with at different events, or, so that's sort of the violence in the streets that's going on. Then we're also facing more and more now what essentially amounts to a soft coup by, we use the term deep state a lot, but it's really the unelected bureaucracy that really controls Washington, that is totally institutionalized by the left, that is totally part and parcel of the left. And they are doing everything they can to take out Donald Trump, and they've been. We now have these text messages, sort of a window into that world through the FBI. This guy who was having an affair with his wife on his wife with one of the other FBI lawyers, and this guy who was in charge of the FBI's investigation into the Clinton email scandal, her classified information that she was leaking out, and then also it basically has been put on the task force for Mueller to investigate the president. And what I find so interesting in these text messages we're reading between them, they're openly talking about colluding to remove the president of the United States using, they talk about an insurance policy. They say we have to stop him. And it's very interesting because based on your point there, you talk about how they have no debate. They don't talk about, well, maybe we can work with him. Maybe we can put up some different kind of ideas that he might be interested in, or find some kind of compromise. There's no talk of compromise. There's no talk of coming to get to the table. There's no talk of saying, well, the American people voted, and now we have this president, and it's our duty as sworn officers of federal law enforcement to uphold the Constitution and obey the will of the people, because that is how our democracy works in this republic. No, there's none of that. We have to stop him. We have to shut him down. And regardless of the risks, we're going to use any means necessary. So they unleash the full power of the federal law enforcement apparatus that was vastly, of course, as Edward Snowden has showed us, increased under Bush and Obama. So they use these warrantless wiretaps. They use all sorts of lawfare attempts against him. And now we're seeing this Mueller investigation. It's a complete witch hunt to try to take out the president of the United States. I was caught up in this in a very small way. They did take away my security clearance in the Navy. And so a lot of people have talked about that. I don't even really know why. I was never actually told why my security clearance was taken away, but it happened right around the same time that a lot of Trump supporters saw their clearances taken away, or promotions taken away, or different assignments. They were either going to be in the White House, and suddenly you're sent over to, Yuma, Arizona, or you're sent to Alaska, you're sent far, far away. Nobody can really answer the question why. And so we see all of this going on because the machine, right, the system, the left, which has been so in control of these institutions, is reeling at the idea that they might be faced that they might be faced with force that they can't own and co-opt, so they have to just strike a violent in terms of that, like a viral infection almost.
No, who would have imagined? Who would have imagined that when the Republicans control the Senate, the House, and the White House, that the only people being investigated are Republicans? I mean, this is just an astonishing thing. And it reminds me of this old saying. One of the reasons I was somewhat skeptical about political power political activism or political action prior to Trump was this old saying, so no matter who you vote for, the government always gets in. And that's because there was this idea, I had it before, and I think other people have had it too, that political representatives, like the visible people you vote for, they're just like hood ornaments. They don't really change the direction of the state. And here we have one man who's really trying to do that, who's really trying to wrestle the wheel from pretty sinister forces. And yeah, in my view, man needs a lot of support. And he can't do it alone any more than any of us can do it alone. And the degree to which we can all band together to reveal the truth to people, to bring the facts to the eyes of the people, is the degree to which we really can save everything our ancestors fought and suffered so hard to accumulate.
That's absolutely it. This is a huge turn back to the way things, quote unquote, used to be. I mean, his slogan, highly persuasive, "Make America Great Again." The reason that makes so much sense is because people believe in this ideal of sort of the Norman Rockwell version of America. They want that version of America. And then the left will go back and say, well, it wasn't exactly like that. And there were issues back then. Well, we didn't have this labor law. We didn't have that labor law. We had this issue, that issue with women in the workforce. And okay, we have those things, and those are great, and the values that we have today are great too. But at the same time, there are some ironclad underpinnings of our civilization that have been eroded, or in some cases deliberately subverted, that now we have an actual chance to take back or bring back, or simply say, you know what, it's okay. It's okay to have those things. It's okay to want to get married and have kids. It's okay to want to be able to defend yourself, to defend your family. It's okay to say, I don't think we should invade that country over there that has nothing to do with us. And I don't want my kids or my friends to be going over there. It's okay to say those sort of things, because as a country, we used to say that sort of stuff. We said it about Vietnam, but suddenly after Iraq, oh, no. After 9/11, well, Iraq, Afghanistan, we've got to go there. We've got to go there. And I was people in Niger and Sudan and Somalia, all over the world, and nobody really sitting back and asking the question, or at least they're starting to now, I guess. Why do we have all of these troops? Why are we fighting everywhere? Why are we in Syria? Why are we in these places? Why can't we just take care of our own problems, take care of our own infrastructure, our own issues, our own debt, and let the rest of the world deal with their own issues?
That's right. Peace on earth and goodwill to all. Well, thanks very much for your time, Jack. I want to give you huge congratulations on your marriage. It sounds like you guys are going to be happy forever, and that's a wonderful and beautiful thing. Thank you so much for your time, taking time off for your honeymoon. Man, that's taking a bullet for the old cause. And have yourselves a very, very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, my friend.
Thanks so much, Stefan. Same to you and the whole crew.